Hey everybody, welcome back to Worship Guitar Now. I'd like to thank you for joining me today, and I'd like to give a big thank you to everybody who's been watching my videos and liking them and subscribing to the channel. It's people like you who make this channel better. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I want to show you how I turned a $10 pile of scrap wood into a beautiful effects pedal board for my guitar. As always, I'm going to film it all and I'm going to show you the end result, and you tell me what you think. So let me reposition my camera and my lighting and we'll do this together. Okay, in order to save time, I didn't bother filming myself cutting the wood, but I am going to give you a rundown of the pieces that you need, and I'll try to put a materials list in the description below. To start off with, you'll need two pieces of 2" by 24. That's two pieces of 2" by 24. Next off, you'll need two pieces of 1 3/4 by 8.5. That's two pieces of 1 3/4 by 8.5. Next, you'll need one piece of 2 3/4 by 24. That's one piece of 2 3/4 by 24. And the last thing you'll need is two pieces of 2.5 by 20. That's two pieces of 2.5 by 20. Okay, I'll move this out of the way and I'll show you the tools that I use to build this. Okay, I'll run through quickly what I use to build this. Now you could probably substitute with some of the tools and the things that you have around your home, but these are the things that I used. First off, I used a pencil and a tape measure. The next thing I used was a pair of these Craig vice grips. Now they don't have to be Craig vice grips. They can be any vice grips that'll help you clamp two pieces of material so they're flat together. And I used a Craig jig. I didn't get the big fancy one. I just got this small one. And it's really good for joining things together with pocket holes so you don't see screws. This drill bit and this Robertson bit, they come in the package with this Craig jig. And I also used a 1/8" drill bit for making pilot holes so the wood doesn't split. If you're going to join the wood with pocket holes, you're going to need a handful of 1.5" pocket hole screws. Now if you're going to try to join the wood a different way, you'll just use what's available to you. And last thing, I got my drills. The reason I have two is just to save time from switching bits back and forth. But I have a driver and I have a regular drill. Now you might not have all these tools at home, but I'm sure you can substitute and make do with what you do have. So I'm going to get the wood again and I'll get set up and I'll show you how I join the first two pieces together. So the first thing we'll have to do is we'll have to drill a couple pocket holes, and I'll show you how that's done. So you get your jig, and it could be any brand jig. They're kind of all sort of the same. So what I do is I set that for 3/4 because that's the size of the material that we're using. It's 3/4 of an inch thick. So I've set it for 3/4, and I've also set the stopper on the drill bit where it has to go too. And it'll give you all that information inside the package. Anyway, you kind of just butt that up against the end and you get it centered in that piece of wood. So the holes are both in the center. Once you have that jig in the center of the piece of wood that you need and butted up against the end, you'll have to use your clamp. What you want to do is just clamp that firmly to the piece of wood. And then the next step is with the drill bit. You're just going to hold on to the piece of wood like so, and be careful to keep your hands and your fingers out of the way. What you want to do is run that drill bit in like so, back and forth a few times until it hits the stopper. You do that twice because you're going to put two holes in it so the wood doesn't twist. And it's as easy as that. Now you have a perfect set of pocket holes. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get those two pieces lined up, those first two pieces. And you want your smaller piece to be flush and butted up against the end. What you're trying to do is make sort of a frame to start out with. Now, just bear with me. Once you get that all lined up like so, you're going to get your clamp in there, and you're going to clamp that together just like that. Now both your surfaces are perfectly flat and lined up there also. So the next step you want to do is get yourself a couple of pocket hole screws. Now remember, these are 1.5 inch pocket hole screws. And what I do is I just start them in the hole like that. And then I get my driver. And it's much easier when you use a long bit in your driver like so. Now I just snug each one up a little bit at a time until I have them both started. And just be careful not to over tighten because you'll split the wood. And as you can see, those are perfectly smooth there. Nice and flat, joined right where they need to be. Okay, we'll move on to the next piece. Now you have to have some patience here because it takes time to get everything lined up just right. But it pays off in the end because you'll end up with a good finished product. Okay, the next piece we want to put in is the last piece to our frame. But first we have to drill some pocket holes in the other two middle pieces. And again, you always want to be careful to keep your fingers out of the way. It's not really that hard once you get the hang of it. Sometimes it's a little bit harder just getting the pieces lined up. There we go. Now we have all our holes drilled for the outer frame. We'll add our last piece to the outer frame. Got that lined up first shot there. Got lucky there. Couple more pocket hole screws. And there we go. None of it's a problem when you take your time. Okay, I'm going to get my other pieces and I'm going to show you how to install those two center pieces. Okay, our two center pieces are all drilled. Now we can finish assembling that. I got myself a little 3/4 spacer. Now when you plan out your boards, your sizes might be a little bit different, but this is what's working for me today anyway. Now I'll just fit my spacer in there where I need it to go, and I'll press my other piece up to it, and that keeps it right where it has to go. Then what I'm going to do is, I'm going to get my clamp, and I hope you can see all this in the video. I'm going to clamp those two pieces together, just like that. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to add a couple screws. Now if you don't have this stuff around your house, I'm sure all of it can be picked up probably at the closest hardware store. We'll take our spacer out and we'll fit our second middle piece in. Again, using our spacer, it's as simple as that. You put your spacer in, press your piece up against it, and then you have your spot for your cords to go through. These clamps are really handy. You could probably use a couple pieces of wood to hold things together and fashion them somehow, but if you have one of these clamps or you know anybody that has one, I'd really recommend doing it because it keeps the surfaces perfectly flat. I wonder if anybody out there has tried a project like this before or made your own pedal board. If you have, I'd really like to hear about it in the comments down below. Or any other projects that you've done that are guitar related. Some of these projects can be a little tedious at times, but I always found if you take your time and you're not rushed at it, things tend to go just fine. And I don't know if any of you are married, but when I do things like this on my own at home instead of rushing out and buying a pedal board, my wife really likes that. She's all for saving money, and so am I. I'd much rather spend the money on pedals than the board. Okay, as you can see, here's our frame, and it's starting to shape up. Now I'll just let you know that I haven't really sanded any of this wood ahead of time. I've already built my board and I didn't film it. So what I'm doing is just making another one so I can document how it was made and what I used. Okay, that part's all done. Moving on to the next step. Now the next step is the riser. And we're going to have to drill a couple pilot holes this time. So I'm just switching over. I'm going to put my 1/8 inch drill bit in the drill to get prepared ahead of time. Now some people like the angle on their pedal boards a little bit different than others. For this one here, I'm kind of just using it for the way that my pedal board is. Now quite often you'll be at your local music store and you'll see pedal boards just like this. And really, this is all they are. They're just a few pieces of metal welded together with a riser on the front. And I thought, why can't I make that at home? So anyways, I kind of got my riser lined up. And I'm not using a clamp here because I'm pretty confident I can get that first pilot hole where it's got to be without it. But I would suggest to you to use a clamp. Now once that pilot hole is in the riser, what I like to do is I like to switch over to a countersink. And what that does is makes the hole a little bit deeper and widens it out so you can put a screw head down inside it and then you can fill it with wood filler. So what I do is I just make my countersink. And you want to make it deep enough that you'll be able to get that screw head down inside there. And then you'll be able to get some wood filler in there. So the next step is to get one of your pocket hole screws and just start it inside there. And then if you've used that pilot hole correctly and got it started in the other piece of wood, then you can just run it in. Just like that. Now that'll hold that in place, and all we have to do is do the other end now. Again, I'm going to use my 1/8" drill bit so I can put a nice pilot hole in. And when we put these pilot holes in, what it does is stop the wood from splitting. Quite often if you don't use a pilot hole and you go to tighten that screw down, it'll split the wood and then you're back at square one. So here we go. And that's all there is to it for a pilot hole. Back over to my countersink again. And then a pocket hole screw. And that's all there is for that. With the riser on, you can see it's starting to take shape here. Now I'll tell you, when I built my board, what I did was I left the riser off first and then I made a wedge to go in here, just so it sits on an angle. And I originally wasn't going to put a riser on. I was just going to use those two wedges and they would have sat like that. It would have been just fine without a riser on the front. But instead, afterwards, I put a riser on, so it actually has both. It has a wedge inside here, and it has a riser. And the riser, what it does is kind of cover up any wires and stuff that's hanging down there. So right now, you can kind of see, it looks kind of rough. But with mine, I took the time. I sanded all the wood ahead of time before I put it together. And then I filled all the holes properly with artificial wood. And I let everything dry properly. And then I give it another good sanding. And then a couple coats of black paint. And I gotta tell you, I really like the way it came out. If you've ever been to your local music store and they sell the boards that are just like this, except they're made out of metal. And I think they run anywhere from $199 to $249. Well, this one cost me about $10 to make. And it's strong and sturdy, and it'll fit all the pedals that I need on there. And the good thing about this is you could customize your own board any size you want. I'm really happy with the way this came out, and I might be able to get a picture in there with my pedals on it later. But for now, I just wanted to show you how easy it is at home to build one of these boards with just some scrap materials that you have kicking around. Let me know in the comments what you think of this board. Thanks again for joining me today. My goal today was just to show you that you don't always have to spend a fortune to create something really nice. I used about $10 worth of scrap wood today, about 40 cents worth of screws, and a little bit of black paint that I had kicking around. And the finished product was this nice little pedal board. I seen this exact board for $199.99, and it was made out of a few pieces of metal. Well, this one's made out of wood. It may not be as great as that metal one, but it'll do me just fine. I can fit all the pedals that I need on here, and once it's sitting on the stage, nobody will know the difference. Well anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's people like you who make this channel better.